February 27th, 1942, 11:45 p.m. over the English Channel. The roar of the Armstrong-Whitworth-Whitley's twin engines is a rhythmic, bone-shaking thunder that vibrates through the soles of Major John Frost's boots. Inside the cramped, dim fuselage, the air smells of oil, stale sweat, and the metallic tang of adrenaline. A single dim red light bathes the faces of the men of C Company, 2nd Battalion, Parachute Regiment. They are shadows among shadows, weighed down by heavy rucksacks, Sten guns, and the chilling knowledge that they are about to drop into the backyard of the Third Reich. Frost glances at his watch. Outside, the moon is a pale sliver, occasionally obscured by scudding clouds. Perfect for a silent approach. Deadly for a landing on a cliff's edge. For months, British bombers had been falling out of the sky over Europe with terrifying, inexplicable precision. The RAF's window into the continent was being slammed shut by a silent, invisible sentinel. The British called it the Würzburg. It was a dish-shaped German radar system that could track a lone Spitfire through thick fog at ranges the Allies hadn't yet mastered. "Action stations!" The jumpmaster shouts over the gale as the floor hatch swings open. The freezing night air rushes in, swirling around the paratroopers. One by one, they hook their statics lines. Below them lies Bruneval, a tiny seaside hamlet nestled in a steep ravine on the French coast. On the crest of the cliff sits a lonely villa, and beside it, the prize, a black, skeletal lattice of steel shaped like a giant bowl. Frost feels the tug of the slipstream as he steps into the void. The jerk of the silk canopy is a violent relief. As he drifts downward, the silence of occupied France rises to meet him. To his left, the gray Atlantic crashes against the chalk cliffs of Normandy. To his right, the dark silhouette of the villa looms. But as his boots hit the frozen turf, the silence is shattered. A German MG-34 machine gun opens up from a nearby pillbox, its tracers carving neon green lines through the dark. The Red Devils have arrived, and the Germans are wide awake. Frost rolls, unclips his parachute, and draws his pistol. He isn't here to hold ground or take prisoners. He is here to steal the secrets of the Reich's electronic brain. Type continue to generate the next section. Section 1. On me. Frost bellows, the crack of his Sten gun punctuating the command. The paratroopers move like ghosts across the frost-covered plateau. The plan is a three-pronged pincer. One group to seize the villa, one to guard the beach for the extraction, and the most vital group, led by Flight Sergeant C.W.H. Cox, to dismantle the radar. Cox is an RAF radar mechanic, a man who, until a few weeks ago, had never jumped out of a plane or fired a weapon in anger. Now, he scurries behind the paratroopers, carrying a bag of specialized tools instead of extra ammunition. He is the most important man on the cliffside. If he dies, the mission is a bloody failure, no matter how many Germans they kill. The villa erupts in a cacophony of shattering glass and shouted orders. A German NCO stumbles out of the front door, still tucking in his tunic, and is cut down instantly. Inside, the Green Devils of the Parachute Regiment clear the rooms with grenades and cold efficiency. But the real objective is 50 yards away, perched on the very edge of the precipice. There she is. Someone whispers. The Würzburg radar dish stands 10 feet tall, its parabolic surface shimmering under the moonlight like the eye of a prehistoric beast. To the commandos, it looks alien, sophisticated and terrifyingly precise. As Cox reaches the base of the machine, his breath hitches. He isn't shocked by the size, but by the craftsmanship. It isn't a crude piece of war machinery. It's a scientific instrument of the highest order. "Cover him," Frost orders, as his men form a perimeter, kneeling in the snow. The Germans in the nearby garrison have realized this isn't a mere reconnaissance patrol. A convoy of trucks is already screaming down the road from Le Havre, headlights flickering through the trees. Cox fumbles with his flashlight, the beam shaking as he inspects the back of the radar unit. "I need the components, Cox, not the whole bloody thing," Frost shouts over the increasing volume of return fire. Cox begins to work. With the steady hands of a surgeon amidst a riot, he starts unscrewing the modular panels. He discovers something that makes his heart race. The German engineers have labeled everything. The vacuum tubes, the oscillators, the wiring. It's a masterclass in modular design. But as he pulls a critical component free, he finds something the British intelligence hadn't dared hope for. It isn't just a receiver. It's a sophisticated frequency controller that reveals exactly how the Germans are painting British bombers. A bullet pings off the metal dish, inches from Cox's head. Almost. Got it. He grunts, bracing his shoulder against the freezing steel as he pries a heavy internal component loose. "They're closing in from the woods," a sentry screams. "Armor. They've got armored cars." The night is no longer dark. It's lit by the strobe light flashes of muzzle flares and the orange glow of burning German trucks in the valley. The paratroopers are pinned. To their rear is a 300-foot drop into the freezing sea. To their front, an increasingly furious German infantry force. "Cox, we're out of time!" Frost yells, firing a burst toward the tree line where the shapes of German helmets are becoming visible. Cox gives one final, agonizing heave. With a metallic crack, the core components of the Würzburg, the pulse modulator and the receiver, come free. He shoves the heavy, jagged pieces of technology into his canvas bag, the weight nearly pulling him over. "I've got the guts of it," Cox shouts. "Blow the rest," Frost commands. A sapper slides forward, slapping plastic explosives onto the remains of the dish. A muffled thump follows, and the pride of German aerial surveillance is twisted into a blackened skeleton of useless wire. "Withdraw to the beach! Move! Move!" The descent is a nightmare. The paratracks, the narrow, winding paths down the cliff, are slick with ice and mud. The men are literally sliding down the face of the ravine, dragging their wounded and the precious cargo. Below them, the beach is supposed to be clear, but as they reach the shingle, they find the beach group locked in a savage bayonet struggle with a German platoon that had been guarding the pillboxes at the water's edge. "Where are the boats?" a sergeant cries out, scanning the black horizon of the English Channel. The sea is empty. The Royal Navy motor launches, hampered by the swell and the risk of being spotted by coastal batteries, are nowhere to be seen, and the commandos are trapped on a narrow strip of pebbles, the cliff behind them now swarming with Germans looking down, preparing to open fire into the killing box of the beach. Frost feels the weight of the disaster looming. He has the intelligence, he has the components, but he is trapped between a wall of chalk and a wall of water. He pulls a flare pistol from his belt and fires a green signal into the sky. It is a desperate "here we are" to a fleet that might already be gone. Then, through the mist and the spray, a low rhythmic thrumming begins. Not the sound of German trucks, but the deep, guttural growl of Rolls-Royce engines. 6 Royal Navy motor gun boats roar out of the gloom, their machine guns raking the cliff tops to keep the German snipers' heads down. The commandos don't wait for the ramps to lower. They plunge into the icy surf, chest deep in the numbing Atlantic water, holding their weapons and the radar components high above their heads. "Get Cox on the lead boat." Frost barks, shoving the technician toward the swaying ladder of an MGB. The extraction is chaotic and violent. German mortars begin to bracket the beach, the geysers of water erupting closer and closer to the wooden-hulled boats. As the last man is hauled over the gunwale, the boats wheel around, their wakes white and churning, disappearing into the fog just as a German searchlight sweeps the empty sand. Days later, in a nondescript laboratory in Swanage, the mood is vastly different. The shock the British scientists feel isn't from the heat of battle, but from the cold reality of the technology sitting on their workbench. Dr. R.V. Jones, the head of British scientific intelligence, stares at the captured Würzburg components. He is surrounded by top-tier physicists and electronic engineers. The room is silent as they realize the Germans haven't just matched British radar. They've surpassed it in sheer elegance of engineering. "Look at the frequency," Jones whispers, pointing to the settings on the captured dial. The shock comes from two realizations. First, the Germans were using a much shorter wavelength than the British suspected, meaning their accuracy was lethal enough to guide a night fighter directly onto a bomber's tail within meters. Second, and more importantly, the British now saw exactly how to blind it. The captured components revealed that the Würzburg was vulnerable to a specific type of interference. This discovery led directly to the perfection of window, the dropping of strips of aluminum foil to create thousands of false echoes on German screens. Because of the Bruneval raid, the Allies didn't have to guess the length of the foil strips. They knew the exact measurements required to jam the German eye to the millimeter. The intelligence gathered that night at Bruneval didn't just save a few planes. It paved the way for the massive electronic screen that would protect the Allied fleet on D-Day 2 years later. The paratroopers had jumped into the dark to steal a ghost, and they returned with the key to winning the war in the air.